Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. I am back from Summer Game Fest 2023, so you can expect a much less noisy episode this week. Our main segment is going to be all about Overwatch 2's upcoming PvE story content. I got my hands on it and talked with the director of the game. We'll be getting into that a little bit later, but joining me for this episode is Game Informer's Wesley LeBlanc. Wes, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm still somehow recovering on the jet lag, I think, from Summer Game Fest, which is weird because I went to Tokyo early this year for our Final Fantasy 16 cover, and jet lag was nothing for me. And for some reason, California's kicking my butt.
I don't think it's jet lag, to be honest. I think it's just,
just body exhaustion.
It's just the constant grind of being out at one of those events, because I'm feeling it too. And, you know, I'm sleeping full 8-hour nights now, but it's like today's the first day that from the jump I felt human. It really is, because like, you know, you look at those events, we're booked pretty much immediately after breakfast, sometimes during breakfast.
Yeah.
All day we're doing stuff, and then in the evenings we're going out and shaking hands and making conversations with people in the industry. So like,
yeah, I feel like I got a collective 12 hours across 5 nights in LA.
I had one night, the second to last night, which, you know, it was a bunch of Xbox stuff on the Sunday.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had a late evening that night, and I went to bed. I was like, okay, well, I'll be able to sleep in until the Xbox showcase, which was at, I think, 10 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, I'll get like a solid 6 hours. I can function on that. My body decided to wake me up at 6:30 in the morning, and I have no idea why. And it was a rough day to get through that. And yeah, that's one day that like I did a lot of cool stuff, but it was also very much like a struggle constantly. Like I'm sitting there in like a game demo of a very cool looking game, and I can feel myself just kind of like starting to zone out, and I'm like, no, stay awake.
Right. Yeah. It's tough to, because like it's such an exhausting event, but then you're also talking to like directors of games that you're covering and stuff, and you're like putting on your game face for that long is just draining as well. I don't know, like when I'm off work and I get home and I can just kind of like bleh on the couch. You don't get to do that at Summer Game Fest, so you're just always on for like 5 days straight.
I would be back in my room. I'd be back in my room, and I'd be like, all right, I can breathe for a second. But it's like, if I'm back in my room and I'm not doing anything, I feel guilty that either I'm not out seeing people that I don't see normally, or I'm not working. So it's like, it's a very weird thing where you're just always on, whether it's being quiet and writing up something in your room, or, you know, I was editing this last week's episode of All Things Nintendo in my room one morning before I went to the show. And it's just like your brain's constantly functioning until you go to sleep. And even then, like, you don't really sleep the full 8 hours usually.
Yeah, but so worth it. Such a great time. It really is. It's truly incredible.
It's something I look forward to every single year. Before that, it was E3, and, you know, we went a couple of years without having any kind of physical event in June. So I'm glad we're back. But I wanted to kick off this episode kind of talking to you a little bit about Summer Game Fest, because we covered a lot of the big stuff from the streams and like our favorite things that we saw on the show floor with Jill Grote last week. But I wanted to get your kind of overall impressions, because, like, for lack of a better word, or better phrase, I guess, this was like your first like big show, right?
Yeah. I mean, I got hired like in 2021, so we were like really in the thick of COVID, and not much was happening. And then kind of last year's events started happening again, but that's like preview events where it'd be me and like maybe 5 other media people, and we'd be playing Pokemon or something. This was the first time where it was like everyone in the industry, developers, publishers, executives, journalists, like all of us were in the same city doing the same thing. And it was, obviously a very different experience.
Yeah. And so what were your overall thoughts of like kind of like being in kind of the epicenter of the games industry, at least for a week?
Yeah, it was really, really awesome and cool, and somehow exhausting, but also a lot more casual than I thought it'd be. From talking to people who have been to E3, it sounds like this is 10 times better from like a work standpoint.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know if like, I definitely don't feel the same levels of hype and excitement as E3 used to make me feel, but I was also a fan back then, and I was just watching a showcase at home and like losing my mind over all these announcements. Whereas now, like, showcases for me mean, you know, you're working and you're writing quick news stories and it's stressful. And I do think there's still a little luster lost to it being spread out so far apart. And sometimes it's part of Jeff Keighley's thing, sometimes it's not, but sometimes Jeff Keighley says it is, and it's like a whole, it's like a strange like hodgepodge of stuff. So I think I like E3's like more streamlined format where, it's like 2 or 3 days total. But from like an in-person coverage, just being on the ground, I think SGF was awesome. It's basically like a campus of buildings, and yeah, it's nice. You could be eating pizza and you're like, oh crap, I have an appointment woman and I forgot about, and you can make it to that appointment on time because it's right there. And
Which,
it
by
was
the
just,
way, that was not something that ever happened at E3 because one, it was like 30 minutes to get from one
yeah,
side of the convention center to the other. But two, you usually didn't eat during E3 because like there were no food options. And like the food options that
yeah,
were there were like, all right, there's 10,000 people in line right now and it's
yeah.
terrible food.
And the food here was pretty good, especially the pizza. I'm not going to name names, but someone who lives in New York told me that this pizza was as good as what they have in New York. I
I
don't know about
disagree with
that.
that.
I don't know about that, but it was good pizza.
It was
But
good pizza, but yeah, New York pizza just wipes the floor with it.
yeah, but yeah, just being somewhere where there's like, I mean, it's just like all your friends and your homies from the game industry, and you're all playing games. And then it's very casual. Like you're on a couch and the TV's in front of you. I was playing Thirsty Suitors, a game I'm looking forward to, and the developer came and sat down, and I got to interview him. And I'm sure it's made to feel this way, but it was like very chill. Like I just started asking him questions and we were chatting, and it didn't feel very like traditional in the sense that like PR wasn't there, like listening to his every answer and making sure this and that, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, I played your game and now we're talking about it. And then I move on to the next one and do the same thing. And I loved how casual, but like professional it was, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like we were getting a lot of work done and seeing games and things to write about, but it was chill. Like I felt pretty chill the whole time. It's hard to explain without being there because, having watched from the outside in all these years, I didn't know what to expect. And it was still not what I expected, but in a good way. Like it's just a really good time. I think my main takeaway is I'm very excited about all the games I played and stuff, obviously, but like it really was so cool meeting and hanging out with people for the first time. I mean, I met you in person for the first time there.
Yeah.
And we've been working together for 2.5 years. And like, I got to do that with like 100 other people that I've known for years and finally meet in person. Just so cool.
It's a great experience, and like that's how I got my start really in the industry, aside from like just writing until I was relevant. Essentially was I started going to these events, and like PAX East 2011 was like my first like quote major games industry event where I just like paid my own way. I took PTO for the weekend and or for the long weekend, and then showed up and was like, hey, I want to cover your game. And that's basically what I did. I interviewed
So
people,
cool.
and that was kind of like my foot in the door. So yeah, going to these events is immensely rewarding. But you mentioned Thirsty Suitors and like kind of playing that, and I know you enjoyed that a lot. Were there any other favorite things that you saw?
Oh yeah, for sure. Mortal Kombat was really awesome. We got to play Mortal Kombat 1. You wiped the floor with me. It was like embarrassing. How I think I beat you once out of like maybe 8 rounds together. And of course we had like a Mortal Kombat dev watching behind us. So I'm like, oh gosh. And then we interviewed Ed Boon shortly after, which, that's a wild statement to say. Cocoon is probably my show standout, which is from a former designer on Playdead and
Hmm.
Playdead's Inside and Limbo. Awesome little sci-fi game. You can read my thoughts on Game Informer.
That's coming to
Um,
Switch as well. So is Mortal Kombat.
yes, yeah. And we'll have a video up about Mortal Kombat soon, but we actually talked to Ed Boon specifically about that Switch port. You asked him about it, which
Yeah, that interview was actually on last week's episode of All Things
oh
Nintendo.
shoot, my bad. I hadn't
Yeah.
listened yet. I know we're also doing I think it'll be a video as well on
Yeah, there'll be a
YouTube.
video version of the interview that you heard last week on All Things Nintendo. So if you want to see our shining faces
Yeah.
discussing both the Switch port and just Mortal Kombat 1 at large, go to Game Informer's YouTube channel.
Yeah, and then the one game I'm actually bummed I didn't see because I'm just seeing so much hype about it is Alan Wake 2, which I know you did see, right?
Yeah, that was actually my game of the show. Like
Yes, yeah.
I left that demo so impressed. Sam Lake and his co-director Kyle, they just absolutely get it. Like sitting
Yeah,
down and talking with them, they understand what people want from this game. They understand how to masterfully build horror, build tension. I know it's not a Nintendo game or a Switch game, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But like, I came away from that conversation and be like, oh yeah, they like we visited Finland. Elise Favis, former Game Informer editor, and I, and former Game Informer video editor Leo Vader. we went out to Finland and visited Remedy in 2019 to see Control, and
Mm.
that was like, okay, yeah, this is like kind of like the ultimate evolution of all of the Remedy formula. Alan Wake 2 feels like they continued evolving the Remedy formula, but they also learned so many lessons from Control. And I
Yeah.
mean, you may recall that won Game Informer's Game of the Year in 2019. So like that's a good game to reference.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait to see more. Even I mean, just hearing what you and other people who got to see it said, and then just obviously the trailer and the gameplay from SGF.
And they're touting it as their first survival horror game, which is really
Yeah,
interesting.
it looks very Resident Evil, very Resident Evil like 2-ish is what
I mean,
it's
the
giving me
inventory
vibes.
they brought up the inventory management system, and they're like, oh yeah, this may look familiar to anybody who's played a survival horror game that starts with R.
That's awesome. And look, yeah, it's not coming to Switch yet, but who knows? They did the Control Cloud thing
Oh
like
yeah, that's
years
right.
later. Maybe it comes. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the cloud initiative on Switch, but maybe it comes to Switch. So all this will be, good that we talked about it. Um,
And by the
and
way,
then
Alan Wake Remastered is on Switch, so maybe
yes, yeah, yeah.
there's a built-in audience potentially.
And then other than that, Foam Stars not coming to Switch, so I won't talk about it too much. And we also have Splatoon 3 on Switch already. But Foam Stars better than I thought it would be. Better than I thought it would be. And
That's like
Star
basically like the non Switch owners. We have Splatoon 3 at home.
literally that, yeah. But the soundtrack, I mean, Splatoon 3 soundtrack is pretty incredible. Foam Stars is going to have a banging soundtrack as too.
Well,
Very
then,
Persona 5-esque.
oh, you just cross-referenced two of my favorite music games of all time: is Splatoon or soundtracks, Splatoon 3, or just the Splatoon franchise as a whole, and Persona.
Yeah. It's very, very Persona. Like I need to look into it more because it might. That singer sounded just like the singer of Persona 5 soundtrack. I don't know if it is, but
No way
same.
did they get Lynn. No
I
way.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think so because I feel like that would have been touted in like marketing and stuff. But exact same vibes. Um, and then the other game probably that stood out to me the most is probably Star Wars Outlaws from Ubisoft. It just looks great. I was so impressed with that first impression, and the gameplay looks fluid and fast and very different for Star Wars. And I can't wait. I know it's not coming to Switch, but yeah,
Man, there's a lot of great games that are there. And it's like we're hearing all these amazing games, and we haven't even gotten the Nintendo Direct for presumably that's coming this summer. So we're gonna
yeah.
talk about like kind of our speculation for that in this episode's definitive ranking on the tail end of this episode. But I guess we'll wrap up kind of like our overall like thoughts on Summer Game Fest there. But did you have a favorite after hours activity that you did?
Yeah, probably. I've got two. I really enjoyed the Final Fantasy 16 pre-launch event.
Mm.
Just because it was cool to see like so many Final Fantasy nerds like myself in one building and having a good time. And they had a giant Ifrit statue that's like 25 feet tall, which is awesome. And then probably just hanging out at like so there's like a hotel. It's like the main, I don't know, hub of LA, but the JW Marriott, it's this giant hotel lobby, and everyone just, hangs out there and chats and networks. And it was just, I'd heard about it for years, but to like finally be there and do the thing that everyone else has like talked about doing, which is, hang out at the JW late into the night. Just so cool to actually get to do that. And yeah, hang out with homies.
Yeah, that's always the highlight of my trip every single time. Like, no disrespect to the games that we're seeing, no disrespect to the developers that we're interviewing, but just hanging out in a casual setting with all these people from the industry is always such a highlight because
Yeah.
the vast majority of the people that we interact with are just amazing, amazing folks, and it's
Yeah.
great to like get to know them better.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just fun. I mean, like we talk about games sometimes, but I bet people would be surprised how like little we do talk about games. Like we're just like hanging out and having a really good time, and yeah, it's just
Usually, most of the game talk is like, "Oh, what was your favorite thing that you saw today?"
exactly, yeah. And it's like, oh, is this worth going? Like, should I go check this out if I can? Blah blah blah. Very cool.
Yeah, I did make it to the Final Fantasy 16 pre-launch party as well at the very beginning. I unfortunately had to go to another event after that, but
Yeah.
it was a cool thing to see all those people like kind of jam-packed in there. Was it just basically like panels the entire time?
Yeah, so they had like a outside area where there's like food, and then inside this giant warehouse they had like these massive, probably the biggest video screens I've ever seen. And
Oh
then
yeah.
they were doing panels with the developers, and when the developers weren't on stage doing panels, they were outside doing like a meet and greet. I listened to some of the panels. I will say, if you read Game Informer, if you paid attention to our Final Fantasy 16 coverage, there wasn't anything too new out of those panels. So I felt pretty good about that.
Oh,
I talked to the same people, same developers, and there was only a few things that I didn't hear from them that I wrote about. So I was like, you know what, I did a pretty good job 2 months ago interviewing them, which is cool. But yeah, just seeing it just people just being hype. Oh, and there was like demo kiosks too. People got to play what the press had played back in February or last month or something like that. I don't know, but everything that press has played for previews was basically there to play as a demo.
the thing that disappointed me the most was that I couldn't stick around for the music panel because
Yeah.
I love Alex Mukala, who
Hmm.
you may have seen his videos where he just like kind of reimagines a lot of video game music. He loves doing Final Fantasy. He's done some amazing Persona covers on social media, but like he did a collaboration with the composer of Final Fantasy 16, and I was so bummed that I had to leave before that part of the panel. Did you get to see that one?
Yes, I was there, and it was awesome. It was as awesome as you think. He's Alex is like a really cool, um, just person in general. Not to mention he's extremely talented. And just hearing the two of them talk about music, and they even released like a video where they were playing a song, I think, from the game together.
I will
Uh,
have to check that out.
yeah, it's very cool. Soken is also a genuine delight. He was probably my favorite person I interviewed for the cover story. He's just like he loves life and he loves Final Fantasy. And I think he goes about creating music, which, mind you, is like some of Final Fantasy's best in a very creative way. Which is he doesn't write anything till it's fully playable. That way he can play it and then kind of process the emotions he felt while playing it and then write the song, which I think is a very fascinating, probably stressful way to write
Yeah.
music. But yeah, awesome panel. That was probably my favorite panel.
Yeah, that was the one that I was bummed I couldn't miss. But all right, we've talked enough about non-Nintendo related stuff on this very specific Nintendo podcast. But let's jump into some news here. We don't have a ton, despite the fact that it was just Summer Game Fest. I think we covered a lot of the stuff last week, but we do have some stuff that's lingering that we didn't talk about on last week's episode. And then we're going to end this first segment with some impressions about a few games that we played after I recorded last week, that we're going to talk about later on in this segment. But the first piece of news that I want to talk about is Atlas. They, before we recorded last week's episode, leaked their own announcement for
Yep.
before the Xbox stream that happened on Sunday. But they revealed two new Persona projects. One is a Persona 3 remake, which I have been wanting for a long, long time. It looks amazing. However, it's not coming to Switch. So I guess we're just going to stick with the second announcement, which is coming to Switch. It's called Persona 5 Tactica. As the name implies, it is a tactical game in the Persona 5 universe. So it follows the story of Persona 5 and Persona 5 Strikers. Uses kind of a chibi art style, which I'm not sure how I feel about. Like, I kind of like the art
Yeah.
style of the original Persona games, which feels weird to say original Persona 5
Oh, you
games.
mean? Oh, okay. I was gonna say I
Yeah, like
wasn't sure. Yeah.
because Persona 5 has such a striking art style. And
Yeah.
it feels weird to kind of iterate that. I know that they're trying to go for kind of like that Persona Q vibe in terms of like the art style, but like why mess with perfection is kind of the feeling that I have. But regardless, it's going to be good to have another adventure with these characters. That was my favorite part of Persona 5 Strikers. And basically, the party from Persona 5 gets sucked into a different world, and they kind of remark that, oh, it looks like a palace. But then there's like this other faction called the Rebel Corps, and they seem like they're allies based on the dialogue, but I would not be surprised if there's some weird twists on that. And basically looks like your kind of standard grid-based strategy game with like some Persona 5-esque mechanics. Like I know there's baton passes and stuff like that, and Personas, obviously. But have you kept up with the Persona 5 games at all?
I am 80 hours into Persona 5 Royal.
So you're passing the tutorial right now.
Yeah. Basically, I play a palace, like I don't know, you can kind of treat the palaces as like an arc, like the
Mm-hmm.
palace and then the associated stuff that happens in the game. So I usually take a break after each palace because each one's like 20 to 30 hours.
Yeah, like if you
Um,
if you include all the arcs and like after hour stuff that you can do.
exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's on my list to beat. I feel like I need to especially rush now because I do want to play Tactica. Um,
You should really
but
play Strikers if you like the characters. Like Strikers is a
yes,
completely different style game, and both of these games are on Switch, so like it's very easy to
it's a
play them.
Musou, right?
Yeah, it is, but it isn't. Like it incorporates turn-based stuff almost in the way that Final Fantasy VII Remake does, where it's like, yeah, it's a
Oh,
Muso, but it also like because it's from the team that does like Hyrule Warriors and
yeah,
Fire
yeah.
Emblem Warriors and all that stuff. But like they also have like a turn-based thing. When you summon your persona, the action freezes and you can like choose which spell you want to cast, basically.
That's cool. That team's really good at turning Maso, like taking a property and making it a Maso, but still making it unique to that property. They did
This
that.
feels the most unique to the
Yeah.
property that they've done.
Yeah, I want to check it out. Is it canon?
I believe so. Like they kind of made it seem like, yeah, this is like following the story. Like they kind of go on this road trip and then they uncover some stuff that's going on.
Yeah, that was my only thing with Tactica was like it doesn't feel canon, and I kind of hate that only because, if you're investing so much time into these characters, I don't know. It's kind of like what the Breath of the Wild Muso, I forget the name of it.
Age of
Uh,
Calamity.
yeah, I don't really. I mean, I won't spoil it here, but I don't really like what they did with that story because it kind of just, I don't know, made it not as impactful. And I'm a
Yeah.
little worried the story of Tactica might be that way, but gameplay looks solid. Very excited.
Yeah. And I love a good turn-based tactics game. And again, I've said this so many times. The Switch is becoming such a great place for people who love strategy and tactics games.
There's like
Like,
no better platform for sure.
I mean, Steam probably.
Oh, fair
but,
enough. Yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
But they don't
like
get yeah.
you have Triangle Strategy, you have Mario plus Rabbids, you have all these great games. Fire Emblem, like it's wild how good the platform is for a previously very niche genre.
Yeah, and it seems to be blowing up. I mean, do we have a triangle strategy story in this episode?
No, we don't.
Okay, well, I'll just mention it here. They have an update coming soon that includes like a whole new story for free,
Jeez,
which is
yeah,
wild.
it's just an incredible platform for strategy games. But anyway, Persona 5 Tactica comes to Switch and pretty much every other major platform on November 17th. So this year, very excited for that one. Next up, we have an announcement of a Nintendo tour. You know about this?
The
Summer of
yeah.
Play.
Oh no, I don't know about this. I'm
No, so
intrigued.
it's the Summer of Play tour, which leads up to the Nintendo Live event at PAX West this year. And so at these events, it's basically just in shopping malls around the country. And you'll be able to play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which I already own, Tears of the Kingdom, which I already own, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Animal Crossing New Horizons, both of which I already own, and then Pikmin 4.
Okay, I was gonna say like, where's the pool? Why am I going to this? But there we go.
But yeah, Pikmin 4 is obviously the big attraction for people like, us who've kept up with all the major Switch games to this point. But like, that's a solid stable of games for like the main goal of this event, which is basically to get more people to buy a Switch, I would imagine.
Yeah,
I mean,
the 10 people that don't have it, this should get them to buy it.
I mean, but also, even if like you're just like, oh, I've been hearing a lot about this Tears of the Kingdom game, you can go see it in action, or like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which I hope it runs better than it did at launch. I haven't fired it up in a
Yeah.
long time, but that's not going to really encourage anybody to buy a Switch if you see Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. But
Also, like a Tears of the Kingdom, a 15-minute demo sounds terrible. Like I would be so confused if they were like, "Yeah, you can play this game for 15 minutes." I'd be like, "What is happening?"
well, there's also going to be special swag that you can get if you collect all the stamps for like doing the activities around the station, and then you also get 100 My Nintendo Platinum points if you have an account.
Oh, nice. I love swag.
And then here's the good news, Wes. I think we're both going to be able to attend, but like
Oh,
it might
word?
be a bit of a drive for you.
Oh.
So each weekend it's in a new spot. Starting, I think it's Thursday through Sunday is when they're set up in the malls. Minneapolis, where I live, is this weekend. It's the first
Oh,
stop. They
shoot,
must have
nice.
known.
That's
Then
cool.
Detroit is next weekend, and then subsequent weekends after that are New York, Knoxville, Orlando,
Oh,
Austin, Denver, and then finally Los Angeles.
they should
So
come to Jacksonville and do it in a Waffle House.
does this seem like something you would go check out? Like, are you going to make the trip down to Orlando for this?
I might actually. I've got a friend who is also into gaming enough where I could be like, "Yo, what if we drove down to Orlando and played games that we already own on Switch?" I
And
mean,
Pikmin 4.
and Pikmin 4, yeah. I think I would do it. They used to do this with Pokemon back in the
Hmm.
day, and I loved those. I mean, at the Pokemon ones, you got like exclusive Pokemon via mystery gift, which is awesome. But yeah, I think I would do this. Depending on the day, I might go down to Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, how far of a drive is that for you?
About 2 to 3 hours depending on traffic,
Oh,
but it's a
well,
nice drive. I like
I hope
it.
you have other stuff to do in Orlando because I've been to these before and they're pretty low key. They just take up like kind of like a center like rotunda of a mall, and then like they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, swing by, and there's like probably like 10 Switch stations set up, and you can see like all the stuff, and it's fine. But like
My favorite restaurant ever is in Orlando, so I have a good excuse to go there then.
Planet Hollywood, baby.
Yes, yeah. No, it's called Susaru, and it is an incredible Japanese restaurant with ramen, and I forget the name of it, but it's modeled after like the street food style. Do you remember what it's called when they grill stuff on the grills in the little alleyways in Japan? There's
No,
like a name. There's
I
a
know
name
what you're talking
for it.
about.
It's that kind of food, and it's phenomenal. And the inside of the restaurant is all like 1950s, post World War II, like Japan, like animes and like manga, not anime, but mangas and all. It's awesome. Look it up, Susaru in Orlando. If you're listening and you're ever in in Orlando, go there.
Shout out to Susaru. All right.
Yeah,
Did you ever check out Shredder's Revenge, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game?
I did. Yeah,
So, did you see this news that developer Tribute Games has announced a new expansion for it?
yeah, very cool. I learned from our story that Marcus wrote that that character is not a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character, even though I thought it was.
Well, he has appeared in the comics and the animated series. So it's
Yes.
Usagi Yojimbo,
Yeah.
and I guess it was his name originally was Miyamoto Yosagi, which I don't know if there's a reason. I mean, I know Miyamoto was actually before he was a famous video game developer. That was the name of a famous samurai, like back in feudal
Oh,
Japan, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm completely botching like what era of Japanese history that samurai is from, but I'm assuming that's what it was named after, not the famous game developer. But
nice.
yeah, so he's appeared in the animated series and the comics, and there's also a new mode with new kinds of battles plus new skins for the playable characters, which is cool. So
Yeah.
like you can choose like different skins from like across the different eras of like Ninja Turtles. Like there's one that's like, oh, this kind of has the same coloring as like the movie, or this has like kind of like the head bandana that like have been in some of the movies or TV shows. So that's kind of cool. And then here's the part that I'm most excited about, probably new music from T Lopes.
Yeah.
Just the master of kind of the nostalgic but also completely new soundtrack.
Yeah. It's I haven't beaten Shredder's Revenge, but I listened to the full soundtrack as
It's
if I
so
did
good.
because it's really good. It's great for writing and getting hype.
So unfortunately, we don't have a date for this, but it is set to come out later this year, and that's going to be the perfect excuse for me to go back and beat this for probably a fourth time, I think, at this point.
Nice.
That's a very good game. I loved I've always loved the old school Ninja Turtles games, and to have a game that pays homage to that and improves on that formula in so many different ways is just a delight. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to have another reason to jump back into that. Also, my former co-host of my old podcast that I used to do, he is an enormous Ninja Turtles fan, so that'll give us an excuse to have a game night again, which will be fun.
Nice. That's awesome.
So this is the last news piece that I want to go over on this episode before we jump into full-on preview mode here. On an episode of a podcast called the Hot Mic Podcast, film critic Jeff Snyder seemed to indicate that he had a pretty big scoop. And I'm reading this over on NintendoLife.com. Here's his quote. I don't think what I'm about to say is a huge surprise. I'm told that Universal is in fact closing a big deal with the Nintendo Corporation for The Legend of Zelda. Zelda is looking like the next big Illumination cross Nintendo franchise, which again, I think we were all sort of expecting. But yeah, I'm told that is happening, and it's gonna cost Universal a pretty penny because of the success of Super Mario. Nintendo kind of knows its worth at this point, but yeah, I'm told that is now going to be a reality. So for a
Yeah.
while, that kind of set the internet ablaze, like being like, "Oh my god, this guy has this inside scoop," which he still very well may, and like this is kind of par for the course. But Illumination CEO and Mario movie producer Chris Meledandri gave an interview to The Wrap, and I'm reading this on GameSpot. He says this was just recently, like this was a couple of days after that original quote. He said, "Quote." I mean, I can understand how people would surmise all sorts of things because obviously we've had a great experience working together. My relationship with Nintendo now includes being on their board of directors. But in terms of the specifics, that was just something that I've been hearing lots of rumors. This is just what's next between Nintendo and Illumination. This is just about what's next between Nintendo and Illumination. Basically, seeming like he's denying it.
Yeah, I did. It's funny that we added this story last minute, right? This is the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was on Twitter watching this happen. So the Illumination CEO did say basically that like Illumination's not working on a Zelda movie, but Jeff Snyder, I saw him tweet like very recently that the Illumination part of his scoop was speculation on his end. That the scoop is that Universal is making a Zelda movie, and Universal has other studios within it, so not Illumination. So I still think it could be a possibility, which makes sense because Illumination crushed Super Mario movie. Why not let them build out the Super Mario aspect of this universe? And then I'm sure Universal, one of their other studios, can now start doing the same for Zelda. So I still think that this is probably spot on. But I don't think Illumination's going to be making it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people jumped into, it's going to be Illumination. And but I would be very surprised if they got Illumination to do that. It just seems like it's different tonally than what they do.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, maybe, I don't know who does the How to Train Your Dragon movies, but I feel like that'd be a good fit for Zelda. Illumination's more of that like slapsticky comedy,
Minion
type
style.
thing. Yeah, I want to see a minion dressed as Link, but I don't necessarily want a Zelda movie from that studio.
I don't know if I want to see a minion dressed as Link.
Yeah.
But there is actually one more thing that we're going to go over before we wrap up the news part. Related news, actually. An interview with Entertainment Tonight Online, former All Things Nintendo guest Chris Pratt, also the voice of Mario. He teased that we might get news about a new Mario movie soon, but it's going to be on hold until the writer's strike is over. He said, quote, "We're in the midst of this writer's strike, and so everything has been paused and put on hold for the right reasons. I really do support the WGA and our writers. When the negotiations have been completed and the writers feel comfortable moving forward, then it'll be time to start talking about what's next for that." It was basically like a kind of a news piece that was spun out of a fluff piece, it seemed, for Entertainment Tonight. It was like basically about like how are he and his wife celebrating their anniversary. And then I guess they got on the topic of the Mario movie, and they got like a nice little scoop out of it.
That's how you do the best stories. You reel them in with a little something soft story, and then you ask about Mario, and here we are.
Yeah. So anyway, there's that. Of course, we also support the WGA and the writers while they're on strike, and they deserve to get paid, and they deserve to have the negotiating power that they're wanting. So good on Chris to kind of come out in public support of them as well.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But Wes, I'd indicated that I wanted to end this first segment with some kind of lingering impressions. We don't have to dwell too much on these games that I'm going to bring up here, but just some stuff from Summer Game Fest that I think that might interest the listeners of this podcast. Two of mine, both of mine, I only have two, are mobile games. They're not actually Nintendo games or on Switch, but they are Nintendo adjacent. So the first one is Monster Hunter Now. This is from Niantic, the company that does Pokemon Go. And they are making like a full-on like action RPG that's based on like the maps around you. So like it's still map-based like Pokemon Go, where you walk around and you encounter monsters, and you go in, and instead of like the kind of tap that you get in like Pokemon Go battles, these are like actually like, all right, you swipe left to dodge left, you swipe right to dodge right, you swipe forward to move like closer, and swipe back to move back. And then there's like a cooldown on like an attack that you can do. And, you can equip different weapons to your hunter. And then when you defeat a monster, you can like get like all of these like the loot, and then craft new upgrades to your existing weapons. And there's different weapons. Like there's a range, like kind of like bolt gun. There's there's like the sword and shield combo. There's like two short swords. There's a long sword, which has a lot of power and range, but it's kind of slow. So I like that, like they're kind of digging deeper into the like kind of action RPG elements of Monster Hunter, instead of just relying on kind of the same formula that they've gone, where it's like, okay, you walk around, you encounter things, then you just tap a screen until they're yours, or you throw a ball at them. And like, I think that I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know if I'm going to play it, because I'm not the biggest Monster Hunter fan in general, but like I could see why somebody who likes Monster Hunter would enjoy this game.
Yeah, and Monster Hunter fans like really love Monster Hunter, so I think this could do well. And I do think it's good that they're kind of branching out mechanically, because Pokemon Go is a hit, but they haven't really found massive success compared. I mean, how do you compare to Pokemon Go? But yeah, I feel like just replicating it with a different IP hasn't really worked out. So I'm excited to see them kind of dive deeper into that IP's mechanics to kind of translate it to a mobile experience.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic about this one.
Yep.
And also, Pokemon Go is also kind of faded a little bit. It still has a very strong following. It's just, it's come down from like the mainstream biggest story on the planet that it was in 2016 because nothing could possibly maintain that for this long. But,
Yeah.
while I was at Summer Game Fest, I also got to check out the new updates coming to Pokemon Go.
Oh, nice.
So there are two big things. There's showcases, which are going to be little events that like pop up around. I believe they're at Pokestops, and you go over and it'll be like, "Hey, go ahead and like show us the biggest Eevee that you have," and like it can like go off of like different traits. Like show us the Eevee with like the highest attack power, or show us like the highest CP. But like the one that I saw was like, all right, we want to see like which one like what show us the Litten that is like the biggest like physically, and everybody just like kind of like leaves their high score of like, oh, this is the Litten that I have that weighs the most, and everybody who participates gets some rewards, but it like the top people get like really good rewards. They haven't finalized what the rewards are going to be, but I mean that seems like a cool little way just to get like extra engagement, extra ways to like get rewards, and kind of building that sense of community.
That
But
reminds me
here's
of the in the games when you like go to talk to an NPC and they're like, "I'd love to see a Eevee right now," and then you
yeah,
show them and they give you something. Yeah, that's cool.
and then here is the big one, routes. So basically this is a way that's like really kind of continuing the excitement that Pokemon Go had, where it was like it's showing you things around your hometown, or like, so basically you like walk and you can like designate like, all right, I want to start a route now, and you just kind of walk and like can take people on tours, basically virtual tours, and you could like type in like a description and like put like tags on it, like this is an easy walk, or lots of restaurants or something like that. But like you can basically walk around and have people can follow your route, and while they're following the route they will have like Pokemon spawning around them as well, so it's like an incentive to
Oh, that's
follow
cool.
your path that you set. And I think they said it can go anywhere from like half a kilometer all the way up to 20 kilometers, so like you can make something really intricate. And like the way they were describing was like, not a lot of people know about this like cool waterfall that I live by, so like you can like start at like a Pokestop. Somebody can see like, oh, there's like a hidden waterfall that you can start at this Pokestop, and like you'll walk through the woods and you'll find this waterfall. And like that's kind of the one of the ways that they can do it, is like kind of like showing people stuff, or like, hey, let me show you like the walk to like my favorite coffee shop, and like, or like here's a walk from like my favorite coffee shop down along the river and like back up to the main street or something like that. And you can set different parameters and different tags and everything. That seems like it's really going to be a cool thing
Yeah,
to
that's
like for
awesome.
like discovery, and like if you really know like your hometown well, or if like you're in a city that you're not normally in and you want to know like where a cool spot to go is, like that seems like a really great option and a really great feature coming to that game.
Yeah, I like that. That's awesome. It's
And the
cool that
fact
they're
that like,
still like iterating these this many years later.
yeah, and the fact that Pokemon are spawning around you, like it gives you incentive to continue down the route. And like even if there's nothing out there, like if you're in the middle of the woods and there's no Pokestops or gyms or anything like that, you still get like all the spawns and everything along that route.
Yeah, that's neat.
So yeah, those were the two that I saw that I still wanted to talk about on this episode. Wes, you have something that you have to talk about. You got some extended hands-on a pretty highly anticipated Switch game. So I want to know all about your time playing Disney Illusion Island.
Yeah, so you'll be able to read about this very soon. Can I say in our upcoming magazine?
You can.
Yeah, yeah. In our upcoming issue, I have a 4-page feature on this game. I got to go. So I interviewed 2 of the leads from the studio. I went to a Disney campus in LA, which is really cool as a Disney fan, and played the game there, and even played some co-op with the devs to kind of figure out more of what this game is about. So first and foremost, I'll just say if you are a Disney fan, like this is a game for you. It is made by people who really love Disney and know their Disney stuff, and not just like Let It Go from Frozen, but like they know the history of Disney and Mickey Mouse and like what that mascot means to the world and to the ethos of the theme parks and the movies and the TV shows and the shorts. I think that's what I came away most impressed with, was just their knowledge on Disney. And I guess unsurprisingly, that translates to a really well-made Mickey Mouse game, which is the first Mickey Mouse game in a while, and it is a best way to describe it would be a 2D Metroidvania. They kind of shy away from the term Metroidvania a bit because there is no combat in the game, and they feel that combat's a big part of that formula. But they also understand and say that it's inspired by Metroidvanias. It's a massive map. It's all interconnected. You unlock more of it as you unlock abilities. You'll reach spots that you can't quite, advance through because you don't have the ability yet. And then you can mark on the map like, oh, come back here. And yeah, you're just finding like tons of collectibles, hidden areas, all kind of stuff. It's a Metroidvania through and through. But with like a Disney spin on it. So you play as Mickey or Minnie or Donald or Goofy, and they all play the same abilities and everything, but they each have their own little touches to it. Like Mickey's extended jump, he uses a jetpack, whereas Goofy uses a spicy pepper to kind of propel himself forward. So it's the same movement, but you're getting like a fun, cute animation. And they even
twist on the character.
Exactly, yeah. And they even move differently. Mickey moves kind of like as you'd expect, like, oh, that's what Mickey Mouse looks like when he's running. Yeah. Goofy is a little more lumbering because he's like a tall, kind of goofy dude. Sorry for using Goofy like that. But yeah, he kind of lumbers around the map.
How dare you?
And yeah, so you're in this new area. It's a brand new land called Monoth. So this team got to create that. And my feature, which you can read in the magazine, it's all about what goes into creating something new for Disney and a brand new world with brand new characters. But basically in this world, they've been kind of tricked to go there and save it. They thought they were going on a picnic, but it turns out they are there to collect 3 tomes that have been kind of stolen from the people of Monoth.
I hate it when I try to go on a picnic and I have to collect 3 tomes that have been stolen from the people of Monoth.
It happens more often than you think. At least here in Florida. I don't know what's going on up there in Minnesota, but in Florida,
just lawless. So
yeah, growing up, my mom always said like, don't accept picnic invites. It's never good.
It's always a trick, really.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you have to collect 3 tomes that have been stolen from the people of Monoth.
Yeah, and so you're platforming around this world, and there's no combat, but there are enemies. And so you're jumping, you're double jumping, you're long jumping. There's ground pounds, there's wall jumping, and it all feels really, really good. It's fluid, and something I especially appreciated out of the movement was that I was nonstop. Like, it's not the kind of movement system where you're going to like, oh, platform, wait, let me see what my next move is. Okay, let's do that. Let's do this. Like, if you want to just like blitz from the left side of the screen to the right side, it's built for that. And it's very fluid, and it's fun being like long jump, double jump, wall jump, jump, drop down, ground pound, double jump. It's like, it's really,
it just feels good chaining them together.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it's about. And I think it's important because there's no combat. So like, you really need to have fun platforming because that's what you're doing. And yeah. I think they've done a really good job at that. One thing I will say is it's a pretty simple game, at least in the hours I played. There's still a lot more game to play. Maybe things ramp up. But I don't know. It's Mickey Mouse. The target audience, part of the target audience is children. Like, a child needs to be able to enjoy this and not be, grinding their teeth like we might while playing a Castlevania or something like that.
Castlevania, that's the one you pulled?
Yeah, I guess I don't know how many kids are playing Castlevania, but yeah. And so trying to think, I'm looking at a story right now. There's stuff I don't want to say, obviously, because you should go read the piece because I'm quite proud of it. But yeah, something I find really fascinating with it as a fan of Disney and Disney history is there's a ton of lore in the collectibles. So like almost every collectible gives you lore about Monoth in some way, but it also gives you might find like Pete's underpants from the 1990 Mickey Mouse short, The Prince and the Pauper.
Is that the rarest of loot?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, people are still trying to find those today.
Is that why it's rated M for mature?
Yeah. But no, it's awesome seeing like all this like Disney lore. And this is kind of where the team gets to like show their Disney chops is, I mean, when you think of Disney, it's probably easy to go to like a Frozen or something like that. But this team like really did the research, and it shows. Like, there's stuff from 1937 skits and skits and shorts from the 40s. And even like little musical touches remind me of like, oh, this theme park ride or this theme park ride. And it's really cool. It's going to be a great game for people that like platformers. and it's going to be an extra rewarding game for people that like Disney history. And that's something I especially like. And the
It's
last thing
probably
I want to,
awesome. It's probably awesome for playing with like kids, right? Like if you have like kids that
oh
are just getting
yeah,
into gaming. Like I know like Matt Miller, our editor in chief, he is just getting his kid into playing games, and he is
yeah,
loving games like this, like New Super Mario Brothers. He's had a good time with that. Like the Kirby games that you can play co-op, he loves playing those.
yeah.
So this sounds
This
like it's ripe for him.
Yeah, this will be perfect too because so when you pick your character, you pick how many hearts you want. 3 is like pretty easy time, 2 is balanced, 1 is like basically a hard mode because you take one hit, you die.
Mm.
Or sorry, you don't die. Mickey doesn't die. He gets stamped, which you'll see what that means in the game. Or you can just do unlimited hearts and then not have to worry about it. So like, yeah, if you're playing with like if I'm playing with my 8-year-old nephew and he's getting frustrated, I can just pop on unlimited hearts and we're good to go. Plus, on top of that, in co-op there's like additional features that are not available in solo. If you can go up to a character and hug them, and hugging them gives both characters an extra heart, and you can do that anytime you want. So if you take damage and you're like, crap, didn't mean to do that, you Mickey and Minnie can hug, and then boom, a new heart.
Well, that would be a
If
good friendship if he was ever in Mortal Kombat, but then they just said they don't like having him killed. So,
yeah, I don't think we're going to see Mickey in a Mortal Kombat
all right, well,
probably ever. But
I'm
Ed Boon,
crossing it off
do your
my
thing.
list.
Yeah, you can also a character can like kind of lean down or like crouch leapfrog style, and then another character can jump off of them for like a bigger jump. So if like a jump's giving you extra trouble, you can make it easy with that. And then the last piece is if there's lots of verticality in this game. It's a Metroidvania, so you're going up, down, left, and right. If you're somewhere up top, but say my nephew is struggling to like jump up to where I'm at and platform his way up, I can just drop a rope down to him and he can grab the rope and I just pull him right up to the top of me, skipping the whole platforming elements altogether. Which is something I very much appreciate because there's still challenge in the game to be had, and I can make it even more challenging by playing with one heart. But if I'm playing with my nephew who, is still learning about how to play games in general and he gets a little more frustrated easily, I could kind of turn on all these different systems to make it easy. I can, give him hearts when he loses them, turn on unlimited hearts, use a rope so he can just skip this platforming element that he finds frustrating. It's really cool how they built this game for, adults who enjoy Disney and Metroidvanias, but also potentially their children that are going to be playing couch co-op with them. And I should note it is couch co-op only, up to 4 players, local co-op.
Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're very excited for this game. It sounds like a lot of people who are either Disney fans, platforming fans, Metroidvania, minus the combat aspect of it, or just have like kids that they want to play this game with. They should look forward to this game.
Yeah, for sure. So there isn't combat, but I did fight a boss, but I'll save that for the feature that you can read about because I kind of go into more in depth there. But like, you'll still feel at home even without combat. Like
Sure.
combat, the team told me they didn't have combat, and then they were like really like kind of stressing about that, like and the way people are going to react. But they've said that their telltale was that they didn't miss the combat while playing it. And I think I'm kind of in the same boat while playing and platforming and stuff. I wasn't like, man, I wish there was combat or I wish I could hit this enemy. I enjoyed the movement enough where I didn't feel like I needed combat. And I'm excited for more people to check it out. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really good time. I'm excited for it.
That comes out July 28th, right?
Yep, exclusively on Switch.
All right. Well, Wes, thank you so much for sharing your impressions on that. We are going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I'm going to give my exclusive impressions on the Overwatch 2 PvE story missions that are coming to the game in August. We will be right back. I've made my feelings known on this podcast about how Overwatch 2's life cycle has gone. Many of those feelings had nothing to do with how the game plays, but rather the free-to-play battle pass structure, and also that Blizzard seemingly just abandoned Overwatch 1 at the end of its life. However, last week Blizzard reached out to me and asked me if I would like to come visit their headquarters and be the first person outside of the company to experience one of the upcoming co-op story missions. So we took some scheduling efforts and everything, given how busy last week was, but we made it work. And you may recall all of the headlines a few weeks ago, and we even talked about it a little bit on this podcast, that the PvE in Overwatch was canceled. And I found that those reports were a little bit exaggerated. And you may have seen that if you read my thing that I wrote up on GameInformer.com about it. But basically, Blizzard even acknowledged that they may not have been the clearest in their messaging. But basically what it was the hero missions, which were part of a mode where the characters all had distinct abilities and skill trees that you could develop them over time. That part was canceled. So it was kind of the more substantial thing. Blizzard still has story missions, which are exactly what they sound like. They're co-op missions with cutscenes in the beginning, middle, and end. They're meant to tell kind of the story of Overwatch in a structured manner, because to this point, Overwatch has just told its story through media outside of the game, like with the cinematics that they release, and with subtle environmental storytelling, like on the one map, like when Doomfist was about to be launched, they were like, all right, well now like the gauntlet is gone, and so you like retrieve the gauntlet, and like one of the Omnics was like smashed through the wall. So those story missions, those are still incoming. And that's what I went to play. And I played with 3 developers, including the game director, Aaron Keller. And we played Toronto, which is the middle of the first batch of 3 story missions. So Wes, are you excited for this type of stuff? When's the last time you played Overwatch?
Season 1.
So Overwatch
I
2 though, but it was
Oh,
after
yes.
Overwatch 2 came out.
Yeah. I have hundreds of hours in Overwatch 1, and I liked Overwatch 2, but I don't know if for me it transitioned into the free to play battle pass seasonal game as well as I would have liked. And yeah, Fortnite is my current battle pass game, and I can only really handle maybe one of those at a time. So
I was thinking that too, and I was like, oh man, I really want to get back into Overwatch, because I used to play it every single night. I have over 1,000 hours logged in Overwatch 1.
yeah,
And I reviewed Overwatch 2 for us. I love the core gameplay still. And that's why I scored it so high. But like once it revealed itself post-launch to be like, here's how the battle pass works, I really got soured on the experience. And it's like, the very nature of our jobs is we have to jump from game to game to game to game pretty
yep,
often. So it's hard to have like a daily play game. Like I have my dumb Marvel game on my phone, and I play Marvel Snap most days. But it's like it's really hard to kind of keep up with one singular game over the course of a long period of time. And for that reason, I kind of fell off, because I was like, oh, well, we're already so late in this season. I haven't played for like a week and a half. I might as well not even try to get any of the battle pass stuff. So it almost discourages me from playing. And by the way, I had a chance to, before we get into the stuff that I'm very positive on, I did have a chance to interview the director of Overwatch 2. I mentioned his name, Aaron Keller. And I did make my displeasure known about the battle pass. So it wasn't like, we had a very positive conversation on like what is coming to this season. Because when we get into it, you'll see like what I mean. Like this season 6, which is the next one, is going to be a substantial, probably the biggest release Overwatch has ever done, aside from like Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2.
yeah,
But, I was like, hey, is there any like wiggle room for like fixing the battle pass structure? And, he gave me kind of like the probably PR coach speech of like, we're always evaluating. We have made improvements in the time since. But I was like, basically told him exactly what I just told you. Like it almost discourages me from playing at times. And I said like, the game itself has a lot of faults. Halo Infinite has a lot of faults, but they do the battle pass system pretty well, where it's like if you buy the premium battle pass, that battle pass is yours to earn indefinitely. So like if I drop $10 on the battle pass or $20 on the battle pass or however much a game's battle pass is, it sucks that like, oh, I spent that money and now I'm never going to get those items. Like you should be able to continue earning that. And that I really think that is the way that battle passes should exist. Like I get it. Like if you want the free track to be time limited, but if you pay money, I feel like that stuff should be yours. It's just either once the season ends, if you don't want to continue having a battle pass, like I don't know. It's just there's got to be some better way to handle it than like, oh, well, something came up in your life. Too bad. Sorry, you spent that $20 or whatever it costs.
yeah. It's weird because Halo Infinite you mentioned is like a great example. Like Halo Infinite and Overwatch both kind of struggle seasonally in the same way for me, which is like I'm just not sold on what the battle pass contents are.
Mm-hmm.
Halo, I just feel like is like their systems are too confusing with the cores and the cosmetics and all that stuff. For Overwatch, it's that it's a game where you have your mains, and like I have a few mains, but there's like a ton of characters, and sometimes I'll look at the battle pass, and there's not a single thing that it works for, or something that I want for any of my mains. And so I'm like, well, I don't really care. Like, I'm not going to use this Mercy Mythic. I don't play Mercy. So, like, why spend the time trying to get to the end of it? And I don't know if there's a way to remedy that, unfortunately, on a battle pass level, because I don't think they can just make 100 skins every season. But yeah, I just really struggled to feel like I need to get through the battle pass. The skins are cool, but if I don't play that character, I don't really care.
See, I'm in kind of the different camp there because I like to play pretty much every character in Overwatch. I
Okay.
The majority of my time playing is in mystery heroes because I love kind of like the dice roll that you get with that, where
Yeah.
it's like suddenly you have 5 support characters and it's like, all right, how are we going to overcome this? But then you get wiped and it's suddenly like you have 4 tanks and a DPS and you're like, okay, we're going to roll for a little bit here.
Yeah.
So I love like the way a match can swing in that way, and it's always a fun surprise whenever you get like a new character. It's like, all right, who am I going to be? And then you get that character, like, yes, this is exactly the character I wanted, or oh, I guess I'm gonna have to learn how to play this character. Like it encouraged me to become a well-rounded Overwatch player, even though I still have my favorites.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a problem with that. It's really just like the time constraint. That's what just gets me, right? Like
Yeah. It's a
and
lot.
eventually, like, if I were to join this season 2 weeks in, like the new season just started this week, if I were to go on 2 weeks in, I'd be like, well, what's even the point? I'm not going to get like the good stuff because I'm already so far behind. That's what really irritates me about battle passes. But anyway, so I did make my frustrations known. He was very receptive to my feedback. Um, but the main part of our conversation was getting hands on with this mission. It's the middle mission of the 3 mission arc that they're releasing in the next season, and it's Toronto. So the first batch is going to be Rio de Janeiro, which was previously shown at BlizzCon, Toronto, which is the one that I played, and then Gothenburg. Those are the 3 missions that are coming out in the next release. Before you start, there's actually a previously on video where like it just kind of gives you a recap, and it's mainly comprised of like other media. So like some of it's like still shots from like things that have been released in like, kind of like the I don't know how to really describe it. Like it's moving pictures, basically, like not motion pictures, that would be a movie, but like moving, like when it's like a still shot but like there's kind of like animated aspects of it, like kind of like a Marvel snap card where it's like this, it's a still image but there's like particle effects and everything, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, like stuff like that, or like the cinematics that they've released, which are amazing. I love the Overwatch cinematics. Just kind of like tell you the story of what's going on in this moment, and then you're sitting at a computer, and I believe it's supposed to be like Winston's command center, and there's panels, so you can go into one panel in the computer, and it's like, here's some lore, like you can read up on what's going on. You can like view like emails that certain Overwatch characters have sent, like talking about like, oh, what I'm glad to be a part of the team or whatever, because this is kind of picking up right after the opening cinematic of Overwatch 1, where Winston's kind of trying to call the team back together.
Yeah.
So that's where this story kind of takes place. And basically, this first arc that they're exploring is a battle against Null Sector. And it's a rogue group of Omnics, who are like the robots in the Overwatch world. And they
Aren't
want
they
to
led by that tank? Isn't that
yeah,
no sector?
Ramatra.
Yeah, yeah.
Ramatra, who's one of the Overwatch 2 post-launch characters, is the leader of them, or one of the leaders. I think he's the current leader in terms of this storyline, and he wants to liberate. The Null Sector wants to liberate the Omnics who still serve humans, and basically saying like, humanity, we're supposed to be equals with you, but you treat us like servants, and we're sick of that. So they start invading cities all over the world, and then Overwatch is tasked with stopping them. So you get a lot of like unique voice lines. You get a lot of lore in this. There's so many unique voice lines, and they're all based on, or not all of them, but some of them are based on who is in the mission. So, you choose a team of 4, and you like, maybe there's an interaction between like Sojourn and Cassidy, and that'll get like a thing that you would only get if you have those 2 characters on your team. Or like maybe Mercy delivers a line in a certain way, but like if you have Diva in there instead of Mercy, she'll be a little bit sassier with the way she delivers the line. But like you get kind of a good sense of like the team dynamic through these voice lines and like little lore drops that you get sometimes. I don't know, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And the characters that are available to choose are limited to kind of the ones that make sense in the story. So in this one in particular, it's only the good guys, but minus a few characters who are also elsewhere in the story, like Genji's, or not Genji, Torbjorn is doing other stuff. Soldier 76 is doing other stuff. So you can't select those particular characters. Zenyatta is not available. But basically the story opens, and they're in this particular mission, and they're trying to evacuate the city into these drop ships, basically. Or not, I guess they're not drop ships, they're evac ships. And you come out and you're immediately in a courtyard, and you have to defend the courtyard and the ships as the the citizens and the Omnics are kind of running to the ship. So you do battle, like wave-based battles, basically. And, there's these grunt enemies that come out, take them out, like, and they're actually destructible. So, like, I was Cassidy, and he was popping heads with his revolver, and I would blow off one of their heads. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm done. And it's like, no, they keep coming at you, and they're just like kind of like a little bit limited. And then you can also blow off their legs, and they'll kind of start crawling at you like Terminator style almost.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
awesome.
cool. And then, like, there's also artillery enemies that come in. They just kind of drop in, and then they have these giant guns. You can blow off their guns as well, which makes them, less dangerous, obviously. And then there's these like dog-like creatures that were like running up, and like they're harder to shoot. They almost remind me of like the Promethean dog creatures in Halo. What was it, Halo 5, I think? And so they
Yeah,
run
yeah,
up,
yeah.
and they were just trying to destroy the evac ship. So in between the evacuation waves, you have to fight off the waves of enemies, and these little dog-like creatures are attacking the ship, and the ship has a health bar as well, so you have to kind of defend it. And then so we eventually evacuate all the characters in the room that we were defending, and we start moving through the city with this Omnic named Claire. And there's a new type of enemy called stalkers. Now these were the scary ones. So these are like these kind of like, I don't know if they're like telekinetic or what, but like they basically, like, they use like a tractor beam and pull you in, and then they just have like these tentacles that they just like beat the crap out of you with. And if you get
Hmm.
pulled in, it is a scary scene. Like, you are almost certainly getting downed if you get pulled in by one of these things. The woman who was playing with us, she was playing as Winston. They seem to always target Winston, and it was rough for her in a lot of senses. But like we saved her probably about 60% of the time. But like, we can revive the characters if they do get downed. But yeah, those were the ones that were really like, oh crap, there is a stalker, we need to take care of them immediately, because they would cause problems, like substantial problems, if we left them unchecked.
Hmm.
So we go into the subway under the ground, and then there's a cutscene that, like, we find like an Omnic kind of like kneeling on the ground, and
Are the
you pick.
cutscenes like the animated short quality or
Yeah,
different? Okay,
I
cool.
believe they are. Like, I'm trying to like conjure it up in my memory, but yeah, I believe they are in the same kind of quality as that. So the cutscene is basically like, you find like this Omnic that has like this thing on his head, and he seems like he's completely unconscious or powered off or whatever, however you want to refer to it, as an Omnic, and it's stuck on his head. And we're like, how did this happen? Like, what is this thing? And we find out very shortly that there is a new enemy type called a subjugator. And these are like, they almost look like the surveillance droids, or the scouting droids from Star Wars, where they're like, kind of like a sphere with like these little like dangly like legs, and they're floating
Yeah.
around, and they completely ignore the player characters, and they only go straight for the Omnics. And basically they put these things on their heads, and it just disables them basically. And it seems like the null sector Omnics are trying to kidnap the other Omnics, and this is kind of one way to go about it. But basically, just all of these like big battlegrounds. This is the biggest maps that the Overwatch team has ever done. They said they even had to invent like new kind of like data streaming technology in order to make these maps as big as they are. And then also, like, they had to like reconfigure how their spawning tech works, because like it's just, there's so many areas that you can spawn. There's a lot of really great areas to fight, like a lot of really cool battlegrounds. And then like you come out in the subway station, and there's a big battle in like the subway station in Toronto, and then you escape out into a park, and it's like kind of like, all right, there's an evac ship at the other end of the park. You have to fight your way through it, and it was getting pretty intense. Like, I turned one corner, and there were like 3 artillery robots right there. I'm like, oh crap, and they're like, get in the drop ship, get in the ship, get in the ship, and I'm like, all right, I'm going. So that was kind of like the way that mission played out. But yeah, I was surprised by how huge the maps were. Even not taking into account the intro and outro cutscenes, it took us 31 minutes to get through the mission, which is pretty substantial. And it gives you battle pass progress when you play it, so it's not just
Ooh, that's
PvP.
nice.
So
Yeah.
it's always match made, by the way. I mean, you can go into it with a party, obviously, but like, you can't go into it intentionally trying to play with bots.
Okay.
And they said, well, maybe, as the player counts, if they start dying out, maybe we'll put a way to play with bots so you don't have long queue times. But basically, the only time you'll be playing with a bot is if like you're playing in a mission and a player drops out, and until they find a new one, that's when they'll fill it with like a bot for the meantime. But here's kind of where things get controversial for a lot of people. I had a great time with the content, but they're going to be charging for it. So, the game's a free-to-play game. So I guess this is kind of like alongside the battle pass and all the cosmetics and everything. This is where they're going to start monetizing it a little bit. So there's the Overwatch 2 Invasion bundle. So by the way, Overwatch 2 Invasion is what Season 6 is going to be called. The Overwatch 2 Invasion bundle is $15. That includes the 3 story missions, a new legendary skin for Sojourn, and $10 of Overwatch coins, which you can use if you want to purchase the premium battle pass for that month or that season, or you can use it for something else. There's also the $40 Overwatch 2 Ultimate Invasion bundle, which has all of that. Plus, you get an additional $10 in Overwatch coins, and then a legendary skin for Cassidy and Kiriko. So that's and it's also an additional battle pass that you get called the Null Sector Premium Battle Pass. So I guess they're going to have 2 battle passes for that season, it seems like. So
Okay.
those are the 2 pricing things. I think that I would probably go for the $15 one. I don't know if I would drop the $40 for all of that. Again, maybe they're going to have some really cool stuff in the Null Sector Premium Battle Pass. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's been pretty controversial within the community, just given how people were kind of disappointed that Overwatch 2 had canceled the hero missions, and now the story missions are going to be charging for it, which I think they were probably planning on charging for the missions anyway. But I think that was just kind of like another dig at it, especially given the free-to-play nature of the game. It always feels bad when they start charging for stuff in a free-to-play game.
Yeah, and if we're getting new PvE every season, right? Or is that not
No, not
the
every
case?
season. So I
Oh,
asked him,
okay.
like, hey, what's the cadence at which you're going to release these? And Aaron Keller was like, we're not really ready to talk about that. We are working on additional stuff, though,
Okay.
already.
But I mean, even then, like after 4-ish drops, then you've already paid for like a full price game. And then every charge after that will feel, I don't know. I mean, I haven't played it. It sounds like a great time. I do want to check it out, but I'm in the camp where the $15 just feels especially painful. Um, Given everything that's happened since the release of Overwatch 2, pretty much. Like, and I don't know. Like, this team, they just need a huge win, and I hope that these story missions are that. But yeah, that price with it does not help the case.
The only way that I'm justifying it to myself, right? Like, as somebody who does want to play these 3 story missions, is that, like, if I was going to get the premium battle pass, that is only $5 extra, right?
Yeah,
Because it comes with the $10 worth of Overwatch coins, which is enough to purchase the premium battle pass, and that is included in the $15 bundle. So that is the only thing that, like, I think
that's fair.
softens
Yeah,
the blow. If you're going to buy that premium battle pass anyway, you might as well get that for $5 more and get the 3 story missions. But I totally understand why people would be kind of wary about that.
yeah. It's just, I don't know. Every time I talk about Overwatch 2, it's just it's a bizarre sequence of events to see what had happened, and I'm sure there's like a bigger story behind the scenes that we might not ever get. But yeah, it's just crazy. I went from loving Overwatch 1 and playing it every day with my friends, and none of us are tapped into 2 near as much, but I want to be, so
That's the
maybe
thing. That
these
was my
story
main
missions are it.
takeaway. That
Yeah,
was my main takeaway from going to Blizzard and playing this game. Is like, man, I miss playing this game. I actually played some last night. I fired it up for the first time in several weeks, and I had
yeah.
a great time. I only played like a few matches, but I had a really good time just like jumping into mystery and like being like, oh, this character plays different now. They must have done like a rework of them or something. And it's a great game at its core, but yeah, there's just so much stuff around it that I'm not a fan of.
It's a trend that I mean, we talked about Halo earlier, and I'm sure there's other examples I can't think of right now. But yeah, these companies shifting drastically to be a seasonal battle pass type game is, I mean, maybe on paper it seems easy, and there's lots of money to be made there, and companies are doing it. There are companies doing it right. Fortnite's very successful. Destiny's very successful, but it's a tough sell to take an existing game and then turn it into that. And I think that's what Halo and Overwatch and other games are dealing with. And I don't know if anybody's quite knocked it out of the park yet.
Yeah, so I hope that they can turn it around because it seems like they are taking fan feedback. The
Yeah.
people that I met with are very passionate about the game. They obviously know what they're talking about. I just hope that they are being given the free reign to do what they do best, which is make a solid game, and it's not being hampered by kind of like the bottom line that is coming down from Activision or Blizzard or whoever's like I mean, I don't know if they are mandating that like this might be the creative decision that they wanted, but I have a feeling that it probably was something that like the higher ups were like, hey, battle passes are all the rage.
Yeah.
Let's do one of those and make it a free to play game. Where I'm with you. I would have rather just done what Overwatch 1 did, where pay the $60 up front or whatever it was. I forget if Overwatch 1 was I think it was a $60 game. Pay the $60 up front, and then every once in a while, I didn't feel so bad being like, you know what, I put a lot of time into this game. I'm gonna throw them $20 and get like all these extra loot boxes and everything. And I was not a fan of the loot boxes at the time. Now I would take the loot boxes
Yeah.
10 times out of 10.
Which is a wild statement, but I completely agree. Even like halfway through season 1, I was like, I definitely prefer loot boxes, which is wild. And I'll be honest, like Blizzard got more of my money, which is their ultimate goal when there were loot boxes. Every
Yeah.
paycheck, I would buy like I don't remember, like the $30 bundle or whatever, so that I had enough coins to get a bunch of loot boxes. Me and my friends would like get on a chat and do that, and we would bust open our loot boxes and see what we got. And it was awesome. I enjoyed it. I know loot boxes are a problem in many ways, but like it worked for me in Overwatch 1, and I just have not been engaged at all with the seasonal passes. And I know I'm not alone. I hope that this transition has helped, everyone at Blizzard be more comfortable developing this game, but it's wild to think that I prefer loot boxes.
Yeah. Well, the original reason that I fell off of Overwatch was because the end of Overwatch 1's life cycle just became a barren wasteland of no new
Nothing.
content.
Yeah.
And they acknowledged that. That was the reason that they canceled the hero missions ultimately, was they were like, we're devoting too much time, too many resources to this, and it's coming at the cost of the live game. Like that, they said like that was the big thing, is they transitioned too early to creating the hero missions, and that's why Overwatch 1's content suffered.
Yeah.
So what they ended up doing was they were like, yeah, we're still doing that even this long into Overwatch 2's life cycle, is like, we're still putting way too much attention on that. So what they did was they did tell me that they kind of picked at the stuff that they did accomplish with those hero missions, because they put a lot of time into it, admittedly. And so they did transition some of that stuff and recycled some of that stuff into like things that we're going to see in the future. However, they're kind of showing what can happen with a fully operational team supporting the live game, because season 6, which is where the story missions launch, includes the following stuff. So there's another co-op mission. This is a new bonus co-op mission on King's Row called Underworld, and it's new areas of that map that you've never seen before, and you guide a pushbot forward, and it's a story mission, and it says that there's going to be new objectives and enemies that players might recognize. It's separate from the actual story missions, quote unquote, but
Yeah.
it is like kind of like it's like one of those like limited time event stories that they did in Overwatch 1, and they have continued to do in Overwatch 2. There's also hero mastery missions, which you do, like you just take control of a hero and a particular hero and complete various objectives with them to unlock rewards. There's Flashpoint, which is an all new PvP mode centered around controlling like kind of a progression of locations. Like this is a new like spot on the map, and you go and you try to control it. The first team to control it gets a point, and then you go over and there's another control point you need to go, and it's just kind of like whoever controls it gets kind of the advantage in the match. And that adds 2 new maps that are the biggest Overwatch PvP maps in history. So this is just a massive season that they're going to be bringing out. And, I'm hoping this is kind of the start of them turning things around, but I really do think they need to address kind of the free to play structure in order to make that the case.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see in the long run what this is. I mean, they're going to be playing. This is the game for 5, 6, 7 years. So they've got time. It's just how many players are still playing when that time comes.
Yeah, they have a good foundation. They continue to have a good foundation. They just need to find the right sweet spot that's not going to sour players. And a lot of free to play games, they intentionally try to sour players into spending money to ease the frustration. I don't think that's what Overwatch 2 is necessarily doing, aside from the part where it's like, yeah, you can pay money to get extra levels in the battle pass. I think that is entirely intentional. But any game that's pay to win, which Overwatch 2 is not, any game that is pay to win has an element that they want to frustrate their players.
Yeah.
And, I think that the only part of that you see with Overwatch 2 is how slow the battle pass progression, which they have eased a little bit. But yeah, I think that the Overwatch 2 just needs to find the right balance, right? If they want to continue the free to play, then do that. Otherwise, like, give us a $60 microtransaction, for lack of a better word, and just let us like have like kind of the old structure. Like if you want to like be like, hey, Overwatch 2, it now has the option to like pay $60, and then that's just kind of like it goes back to a more player friendly format. I don't know like what the solution actually is, or maybe they just accelerate work on Overwatch 3 in a couple of years, and that's where we go from there and like go back to the premium model. I think that would attract a lot of players back, honestly.
Yeah,
So I don't
I
know if
agree.
I mean, the ultimate goal of going free to play is to broaden your player base. I'm sure they had a huge explosion at first, but how many of those players stuck around is the real question.
Exactly. It's I mean, games industry is such a frustrating pendulum to watch as like a fan and then someone who covers it. Like trends are big. Like one game company does something really well and then a bunch of game companies, well, I shouldn't say the developers, executives up top are like, "Hey, we should also do that and make a lot of money like them." And then it just doesn't work because you can't just pivot like that. And we've seen it happen, with like looter shooters and games like Destiny trying to be Destiny and not working. We're seeing it happen now with battle passes. And then, a couple years later, they kind of revert back to form. Like EA was all about multiplayer games, and now they're doing single player games and finding out that those are very popular. Their Star Wars games are incredible. And it sucks like knowing how these arcs go and knowing where it's going to end and just having to like kind of sit through the 5 years where the games industry is figuring it out. And I wish that executives did not have so much control over developers basically.
Well, unfortunately, they're the ones that cut the checks and make all the
Yeah,
decisions and have the
exactly.
shareholders to talk to. But yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that the trend chasing that we're seeing in the single player space is going to continue, because lately
Yeah.
we've gotten a lot of really great single player games. You may remember like this time 10 years ago, like you had indicated with EA, multiplayer was everywhere. Like it was just like,
Yeah.
oh, Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, this game multiplayer, whatever. Like Dead Space 3, we got to add co-op. It's like I'm
Why?
glad that we've kind of gone the other direction with that, where it's like, no, we can put out amazing single player games, and if you put out Tears of the Kingdom, it's going to blow away everybody. And obviously, that's an edge case because it's one of the greatest games of the last 10 years. But yeah, I hope that developers are starting to learn some lessons from these cases. But clearly, Overwatch 2 is making some big strides. They're adding these story missions that people have been wanting since Overwatch 2 was announced in 2019. I almost said 1999, but no, 2019. It feels like 1999. That's how long it's felt. But
Yeah.
yeah, 2019, almost 4 years ago is when these were announced, and we're finally getting them this season. So season 5 kicked off this week, so we have a little bit of time. But season 6, which is called Invasion, contains all the stuff we just talked about, and it arrives on August 10th. So I'm looking forward to it. I am gonna try to get back into Overwatch 2, see, because like I said, Aaron Keller, he felt very earnest in my conversation with him. He let me know that we have taken player feedback into consideration with the battle pass. I'm gonna go back and give it an actual shot again, because it's the first time since the first two seasons where it's like I'm gonna actually really try to make some progress on this thing. We'll see if I actually can stick with it, because this month is just insane for game releases. I also spent a lot of time last night playing Street Fighter 6, and I know I'm gonna probably lose my life to Final Fantasy 16 when that comes out. So we'll see how much time I actually do have to devote to Overwatch 2. But Season 6 launches on August 10th. We're going to take one last break, and when we get back, we're going to do Definitive Ranking and eShop Gem of the Week. We will be right back. We are back, and it is time for Definitive Ranking, a recurring segment where we take a Nintendo topic and give our personal top 5 lists. Since last week was the big summertime showcase week with several streamed presentations, but Nintendo is still missing in action. Wes, I want to get your top 5 announcements you hope Nintendo will give us in its potential summertime Nintendo Direct. Start at 5, count it down to 1, give me a sentence or two about each.
Number 5, Pokemon GBA games. I've talked about it on the show before, but I want gold and crystal and silver. And you know what? Even let's go. Those are Game Boy games, but I also want Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. I just want Pokemon games on my Switch. Dang it! And I want them to be. They can be on Nintendo Switch Online. They can be piecemeal, whatever it takes, just to make it happen. Number 4 would be I want a new 3D Mario game. I want to know
Yes.
what the heck the Odyssey team is working on. It's been 6 years and we don't have nothing. We got our Zelda sequel. So where is the Odyssey sequel? And I hope it's an Odyssey sequel. I'm not ready to leave the Odyssey mechanics and playground. Number
They're so
three.
good. They're so
Yeah.
good.
And we only got
Capture
one.
mechanic.
And we didn't get much DLC. We got like the little hat DLC, the little trial. I forget what it's called, but it was like a multiplayer
Cappy.
thing. Yes.
I thought
Number
for sure we were going to get like just the structure of that game. I thought for sure we were going to get new kingdoms as DLC and
right.
everything. Never happened.
Why not make a Luigi's Mansion world to tie into the release of Luigi's Mansion 3? Like there, it was just
Or Isle Delfino.
yeah. It
From,
was so much missed opportunity there, and I hope that that's just because they've been busy working on this wild Odyssey 2.
I really hope so.
Next up, similar vein, new 2D Mario.
Oh, interesting.
I want a new 2D Mario game, and I want it to have a brand new art style. I don't want the new Super Mario Bros. Art style anymore. I've never been a fan of it, and it's been long enough that I think we can move on to something that is next.
If we move away from the Mario Odyssey mechanics after one game, and we got 4 new Super Mario games with those mechanics, I will be enraged.
Yeah, that's the worst part is like I wouldn't even be like that surprised. That sounds like a type of decision Nintendo would make that we'd all be shaking our heads at. And it would be a fun 2D Mario game and it'd be a fun non-Odyssey 3D game, but like the layup is right here. Just do the layup, Nintendo. Just do it. And then number 2 and 1 are kind of hand in hand, so I'll just say them both. I just want to see a new console and I want backwards compatibility on it. I don't know if we're getting that, but I'm ready for it. I'm ready for a new console and I just want it. I don't know. I don't care what it is. Actually, I do care what it is. Something similar to the Switch and have backwards compatibility, please.
Those are the 2 biggest wish lists for me as well in terms of like, but I don't think we're going to see that at an upcoming direct. I think they're going to save that for like a late this year, early next year announcement, honestly. Cause I think that we're probably, if I had to guess, I think the next Nintendo console is probably going to come end of next year. That's my guess for like when we would get a new console.
They need to get through this holiday. They're not going to do it before this holiday season because that would hurt their sales for this holiday, which is always great for Nintendo. But like early next year, I wouldn't be surprised if we got it was March, right? We got a March or no.
March is when it came out.
March is when it came out. And they announced what in October?
The big reveal event was like in January, like 2 months before. That was when they had like the big press conference with like
the couch and snapping on stage. Yeah.
Remember Suda51 came out and like yelled like and he's like, and like he like yelled and he's like, oh, that was louder than I expected.
Yeah. We got the Switch and that I think that was the same day as the Red Dead 2 reveal. Red Dead Redemption 2 reveal. I remember those two things being connected. But yeah, that's what I want. I don't think I'm getting any of this at this next direct, unfortunately. But I'd love to be wrong.
I think that the most likely one is actually going to be the Mario Odyssey follow-up.
Yeah.
That if I had to guess. So, all right, here are my 5. Number 5, I want just the acknowledgement that they're going to be doing DLC for Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this game came out.
That's a shoo-in.
I think that would be a great announcement. And then leading directly into that, I want, this is a thing that I say all the time. Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Link Between Worlds on Switch.
No, you're never getting that. It's never happening.
Give them to me. Just give them to me. Those are the 3 best Zelda games that are not currently on Switch. Gimme. Number 3, I want a new Donkey Kong Country game. It's been a long, long time since we've gotten it. 10 years since Tropical Freeze?
Yeah.
Maybe even longer than that. And, Donkey Kong Country Returns. Put that on Switch. The 3DS version with those controls and then just up-res the Wii visuals. That's a solid release right there. But I would love an all-new one.
Yeah, me too.
Number 2, come on. Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah.
It's time. Let's see something. I really just want to see that it still exists, even though, we've seen like Retro Studios still hiring for that game. So it may still be a ways off, but just give us some glimpse into what we're going to be expecting for that. And then number 1, I think this is a very likely outcome. New Mario game. I think that I really think that this direct is going to give us a new Mario game. Whenever this direct ends up happening, I think that that's going to be like the one more thing. Like, hey, here is the new Mario game. And I think it's going to come out this holiday season. Ooh, I don't want to get people too high.
That would be pretty incredible.
I mean, I think that's going to be their big holiday game because as we discussed on this episode a few weeks ago, before like the only stuff that we have from Nintendo
Pikmin.
is Pikmin in July. We have a Splatoon expansion still scheduled, and then we have Pokemon has 2 expansions scheduled to come out as well. And now we have Everybody 1-2 Switch, which we haven't even talked about on this podcast. But yeah, that was something that was
Yeah.
announced kind of like in a weird space where I was traveling and we didn't get to talk about it too much because Summer Game Fest stuff crept up on us. But yeah, those are like the only like Nintendo published things that are on the calendar right now. So I think that Nintendo has a lot that they're going to give us in this next direct. And I would not be surprised if a new Mario game was kind of the big holiday release because they need something, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it makes sense. I just don't want to believe because I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be hurt by Nintendo. But yeah, like what are we playing this holiday? It can't just be like a Mario Kart 8 DLC pack and Pikmin 4 is great, but that's July and it's never been like a massive system seller type game. So they got to have one last hurrah since this is probably our last holiday season.
Or do they? Because think about the way the Wii just kind of whimpered out, the way the Wii U just kind of whimpered out, the way the 3DS even, which, you know, was more successful than the Wii U, just kind of whimpered out at the end. Like, could we be reaching kind of that era of the Switch where it's like the Switch is more successful than any of those systems I just named? But are we going to reach the era where it's like, all right, Nintendo developers are going to start like changing their attention to whatever the next console is and start developing stuff with that and start fooling around with that technology? Are we going to start getting to that era of the Switch in the near future? Like, is this next direct, whenever it ends up being, is that going to be kind of like, oh yeah, we are reaching kind of like the part of this where it just feels like a desert, right? Where it's like, oh, there's like not a lot on the calendar. I don't know.
They're close enough. I don't remember what the number one best-selling console is. It PS2?
PS2.
They're like not far off, right? Like 15 million, 20 million away. I don't know.
I mean, that's a lot.
That is a lot. There's a list on Game Informer because I've written down this list like 10 times. But
so the Switch is currently the number 3 selling gaming system of all time.
What's behind Game Boy?
The PS2 and the Nintendo DS.
Oh, what's the DS at?
It is less than 1 million behind the PS2. So like they could have kept going and overcame the PS2, I think, but they were like, no, it's time. It's time to move on. The Switch would need to sell another 30 million to beat the PS2.
Okay, well, that's not happening, but still, it'd be fun to try with a new Mario game this holiday season.
It would be. And I mean, now's the time to release a Mario game. We just got a Mario movie, which obviously was very successful.
Yeah. Did we have Odyssey on our cover?
We did not. We did get close, but it ended up falling through.
It'd be cool to do a Mario cover. I would like. Have we done one in the past decade?
The only time that we did a Mario cover since I can recall was New Super Mario Brothers U, but it was a combination New Super Mario Brothers U Wii U launch cover. So
Man, I would love to just see Mario with Cappy on the cover. Odyssey 2 or something. So cool.
I did do a feature on Mario Odyssey, but it was not a cover.
Dang.
That was when I traveled to Nintendo's headquarters out in Redmond, Washington, Nintendo of America's headquarters, and was, I believe, the first person outside of Nintendo to play Mario Odyssey, but it was not a cover, unfortunately, because there was I think they had an exclusive cover with another magazine, which was a review cover, not an actual like kind of in-depth cover. But that's a little bit behind the curtain there. So yeah, those are my top 5 things I would like to see in the next direct. Hopefully we get some of the stuff that we talked about, because even if we got like a third of the stuff that we speculate on, that's a very strong direct.
Yeah, I agree. We're due for one. We're due for a big direct. I don't know.
Well, remember last year, Nintendo was not in the week of the SGF. Kind of SGF showcases either. They kind of opted to do something at the tail end of June. So I would not be surprised if either next week or the following week we got something. Like they seem to still like to stay in like the June timeframe. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe they'll just be like, hey, beginning of August, screw everybody.
I love it because Jeff Keighley has been open about how he wants Nintendo at his stuff. And the idea that they just decide to do a direct 2 weeks later after his stuff is hilarious.
Well, back when Reggie was the president of Nintendo of America, they were always very involved with Keighley's stuff, like at the Game Awards.
Yeah. No.
So I don't know.
They still are at the Game Awards. Like they still
not as involved as they used to be. Remember, that was the first time we got to look at Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and the Smash DLC and
Yeah,
stuff. That's
Smash
true. That's
DLC.
true.
We used to get big exclusives, and then like now the past 2 years, like it's been very minor things, but it's never been like announcing the first look at The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's like, oh my God. Remember, like it was just like that video of Miyamoto and Aonuma sitting in a room talking about how horses wouldn't run into trees. That was the weirdest first gameplay look of all time. It was off screen. I don't even think they did direct feed at all. I think it was all like off screen footage. It was very strange.
We ate it up.
And we loved every second of it. But
yeah.
Moving on to the final segment of this episode, it's eShop Gem of the Week. I'm actually going to take the reins on this one. It's a game that I played back in 2018. I reviewed it for us. It's a game called The Messenger. Have you ever had a chance to play this game?
I haven't beaten it, but I've started it and I got caught up playing something else. But I want to go back to it. This is the Sea of Stars developer.
Yeah, so it is Sabotage is the studio. They are currently, as you mentioned, developing Sea of Stars, which is a very promising RPG. We put it on our cover a few months ago.
Yeah, we did.
And this is the game that comes out before it. It's actually set in the same universe as Sea of Stars. I think it's like 2,000 years separated, though. So it's nothing like directly impacting it between the stories. So you don't have to play this before you play Sea of Stars or anything like that. But basically, it's a Metroidvania that takes inspiration from games like Ninja Gaiden. So it starts off as a linear game, actually, where you're moving from one left side to right side of the screen, and it's very Ninja Gaiden-esque, 8-bit style of art. So it looks like an NES game. Incredible soundtrack. And then you get to this portion where you're going back and forth between past and future. And when you go into the future, it goes to 16-bit SNES style graphics.
So sick.
Which is such a cool concept. 'Cause it's like, this is the more futuristic world. So you have like, I guess, futuristic graphics in the sense that it's a Super Nintendo instead of an NES. And it's just a really cool game. I think that the game does struggle with its pacing a little bit when it gets to the Metroidvania style, because that's once you get through like the NES exclusive levels, it kind of turns into a Metroidvania, and it's more about like exploration than anything. And I think the strong suit is when it's in that kind of curated linear style of action game instead of the Metroidvania style. But it's still a very fun game. I still scored it. I think, I didn't even bring up my review, but I think I gave it like somewhere in like the high 7s. So I still had a really good time with it. And the reason I'm bringing it up, aside from Sea of Stars coming out in August, that's August, right?
Yes.
Is that it's currently on sale as well. So
nice.
$20 is the normal price for it. It is currently $5 on the Nintendo eShop.
Oh yeah, that's a cop. You got to get it. That's such an easy. That's a steal.
Even if you play just the linear stuff and like kind of stick around a little bit for like the SNES stuff, and I'm maybe being too negative on it, where the SNES Metroidvania style stuff is just, I like it less. I still like it, but I just like it not as much as like the linear stuff that they put out. But
you gave it an 8. And
I gave it an 8.
Thesis paragraphs, the very end, or not thesis, the ending paragraph. While the Metroidvania approach doesn't play into the Messenger's strengths as much as the linear stages, it's far from a deal breaker. So there you go. You still remember your biggest critique from that game back in 2018. Sea of Stars is August 29th, 2023.
And I think there's a demo for that on Switch as well. But also, I wonder if Sea of Stars, it takes place in the same universe. That very much uses the SNES style visuals. I wonder if that is because it takes place in the future.
That'd be really cool.
That would be such a cool connective tissue.
There has to be something like that in this game, like some kind of twist, right? Like that's Messenger. If you haven't played the Messenger, you still know that like its big twist is the visual change. I wonder if Sea of Stars is going to do anything.
Imagine if there's like a part in the game midway through where Sea of Stars goes back in time and suddenly looks like Final Fantasy 1 or like Dragon Quest.
So sick. That would be amazing.
That would be such an awesome twist there. But anyway, Messenger came out in 2018, so it's been a long road to Sea of Stars. And I definitely recommend checking it out if you have like an affection for like Metroidvania style games or even like those old school NES Ninja Gaiden games.
Yeah.
So Wes, that is an episode. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get any questions or comments in, you can get in touch with me at allthingsnintendo@GameInformer.com or hit me up on Instagram at Brian P. Shea. You can also join the Game Informer Community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel, even just for 1 month. Wes, tell everyone where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter at LeBlanc West. You can hear my voice on the Game Informer YouTube channel, and you can see my writing on GameInformer.com. If you're listening to this and you're very excited about the not Switch game, Final Fantasy 16, go check out our Final Fantasy 16 hub. I put a lot of work into it, and I'm really proud of it.
A lot of great stuff in there. One of the most fleshed out cover hubs we've ever done. Great work on that, Wes, and definitely recommend everybody to go check that out if you are a fan of Final Fantasy 16 or excited about Final Fantasy 16. It's right on the horizon here, so if you want to learn everything you can about that game, Wes's cover hub is about as good a place as any.
Thank you.
That is our show for this week. Thank you all again so much for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time.